You step onto the trail as twilight loosens its hold on the sky. Pine needles cushion your feet with a hush so steady it feels like a promise. The air tastes resinous and clean, a green brightness that opens in your chest. You breathe it in slowly, and your breath returns like a tide, each inhale drawing the forest closer, each exhale letting the day drift away behind you. Tall trunks stand like patient pillars, their bark lined with years of weather. The canopy leans inward, turning the path into a gentle corridor where sound arrives softened. The world narrows to what is kind, the scent of sap, the give of soil, the rhythm of your steps. This narrowing is not a closing. It is a soft focus. That brings the essential forward. You are not escaping life. You are letting life become quiet enough to hear. Your eyes settle into the dusk. In low light, your pupils open wider, and the rod cells in your retinas take the lid, tuned for shadow and motion. As stimulation eases, sensitivity rises. You begin to notice more in the less edges of leaves against the deepening blue, the sheen on a stone, the small unrest of a moth finding its way. Nothing demands urgency. Perception becomes a gentle invitation. A breeze flows along the corridor of trees, an exhale you share. Needles shiver and release invisible perfumes called terpenes, pinene, limonene, and others with names you do not need to hold. Researchers studying forest air have shown that breathing these molecules can ease the body's alarm systems and encourage your parasympathetic cone to widen. You feel it as a loosening. The shoulders settle, the jaw unlocks, the brow unknits. Itself without being asked. Beneath your feet, the ground speaks in small, trustworthy sounds. Soil compresses and springs back, a give and return your joints appreciate. This feedback, pressure here, stretch there, tunes your inner sense of position, a quiet map called proprioception. Walking is language. Your ankles and hips compose sentences of balance, and the pines seem to read them with approving nods. Repetition becomes lullaby, predictable, rhythmic, kind. You pause at a bend where the silence grows textured. Forest silence is never empty. It is braided sound, a far owl's question, the thin rattle of cones, the steady wash of wind through needles. Scientists call this spectrum pink noise, energy balanced toward lower tones that humans find soothing. Your brain relaxes inside it, freed from the tiring work of predicting sharp surprises. There is relief in patterns that do not threaten. You walk again, slower now, as if the night has taught you its tempo. Each step is metronome. Each breath, a soft drum. Your heart learns the beat and adds its own variability, the tiny differences between beats that signal resilience. You feel it as warm steadiness rather than speed. Ease does not mean less alive. Ease means life, UNKNOTTED. The ferns along the path hold their own galaxies of droplets. Under the dim light, each frond repeats its shape in smaller copies of itself. This kind of repeating geometry, fractals, appears in rivers, clouds, and the flared fingers of pine needles. Your visual system likes such order. It saves effort when the world organizes itself this way. Looking turns into resting. The eyes glide instead of grasping. Somewhere, water moves, a small runnel, patient as a thought. The scent of wet stone rises, mingled with the faint sweetness of soil. In that earth smell lives geosmin, a molecule released by tiny soil makers after rain. Your brain reads it as clean and safe, a message older than words. Even if the day has been dry, memory of rain lingers in the ground the way memory lingers. In you, gentle and convincing, you brush a hand along the trunk as you pass. The bark is cool, ridged, a little damp. Sensation arrives quickly, and thinking happily steps aside to make room. Touch and thought share pathways, but touch travels faster and lands more quietly. With your palm on the tree, Your breathing evens. Grounding is simply contact arranged into reassurance. The body recognizes support and lets its guard fall a notch. The path climbs slightly. Your breath deepens to meet the work, but nothing in you strains. You are walking not to arrive, but to soothe circuitry that has been busy all day. In the city, attention scattered, screens, brakes, voices, lights. Here it returns to center, like thread gathered back onto a spool. Biology appreciates simplicity. When inputs slow, internal rhythms repair themselves without ceremony. Night. Coolness settles along your skin. A thin layer of air warms to meet you and travels as your small weather. The needles above braid a ceiling that breaks the wind into ribbons. This microclimate is handmade by trees. You move through it like a thought through a dream. Discernible, unhurried. Your hands know to swing. Your shoulders know to roll. Your neck remembers a length it had forgotten. Memory is not only in the head. It is stored in movement waiting. To be used. Sometimes the path darkens and your feet must guess. Toes become scouts, reporting back subtle changes, a route to step over, a hollow to avoid. Your brain models these shifts with ease, delighted to solve useful riddles. Small, solvable challenges switch on a pleasant chemistry, a little reward for navigating. The result is a wakeful calm, alert but unguarded, like reading a favorite page with the window open to a night breeze. A thin cloud slides over the stars, erasing then revealing them. The brief absence makes the return brighter. Cycles work like that. Breath, heartbeat, seasons in their roundness, the trees adding another ring beneath their skin. You realize you are moving inside many circles at once. Night within season, breath within hour, step within path, and that recognition loosens something. Life is not a straight road to chase. It is a spiral you can inhabit kindly. Ahead, the pines part just enough to show a paler patch of darkness. Curiosity stirs, gentle as a moth's wing. A forest has rinsed urgency from your muscles, so you keep the same measured pace. The needles whisper overhead as they brush one another. Whisper shares a root with breathe, and the whole place seems to breathe you as you breathe it in return. Exchange is everywhere. Oxygen made in needles entering your lungs. The carbon you release feeding their daylight work tomorrow. You pause not to analyze, but to notice how precisely your body is responding to the place. Terpenes quiet the watchdog in your mind. The pattern of footfalls lulls pacing thoughts. Low light teaches your gaze to soften and include rather than grab and judge. Nothing here tricks you. Nothing sells you calm. This is the ordinary way. Organic systems care for themselves when the environment fits their design. The trail tips downward and your knees agree. Gravity lends a hand and asks for nothing back. You let your arms swing a little wider, and momentum does kindly work on your behalf. A laugh almost forms more breath than sound. Calm does not mean still. Calm can be movement carried by friendliness, action without abrasion. The pine scent sweetens as night deepens, as if evening rings the last shimmering notes from the needles. You picture tiny reservoirs in the leaves giving up their fragrance. Into the cool. Your cells notice and file the message under rest. The body is always keeping minutes. Tonight the record reads, safe, simple, slow. You take one more measured breath and feel the day's edges blur at last. The path widens near a small clearing, a slightly brighter patch where the trees step back. You sense something gentle there, not loud, just inviting, a warm suggestion waiting beyond the next turn. You are in no hurry to meet it. You will. Arrive by continuing as you have begun. Step, breath, listen, soften. From the clearing, a faint, honey-colored halo peers between the boughs, a small circle of warmth in the dark. You listen to the pines breathe, and the glow steadies as if it were waiting just for you. You take the next quiet step toward that lantern of gold. You press your palm against the worn iron latch and feel the chill give way. The door yields with a small, familiar groan, a timber-bird syllable. Warm air meets your face, cedar and smoke braided together, and your shoulders release their old habit of holding. You step over the threshold. The hinge speaks once more, then rests. You are inside. The room holds an amber hush. Firelight hums along the grain of the floorboards, rounding the edges of a small, cup-scarred table. As your eyes adapt, the space turns simple and kind, kettle by the hearth, wool blanket folded like a quiet promise, a cup waiting with its mouth turned upward. You breathe again and notice your exhale lengthen, as if the cabin were breathing with you, slower and deeper, setting the pace. Scent leads the way. Cedar's resin lifts into air as tiny molecules, and your inhale ferries them to the back of your nose, where receptors wait like watchful archives. Unlike other senses, smell takes a near-direct path to the limbic system, the hippocampus and amygdala, neighborhoods of memory and emotion. No committee of thought, only corridors opening to older rooms. That is why a single whiff can feel like a key. You do not need to recall a place for the body to remember safety. The door settles under its own quiet weight, shutting out drafts and the last loose sounds of night. In the warm stillness, your nervous system listens again for signals of threat and hears none. Safety is not a concept. It is a pattern. The crackle of flame is soft and irregular, a lull scientists call pink noise. More power in slow waves, less in the shrill. Your heart slows. The watchdog in your mind curls under the table and sleeps. You rest your palm on the door and feel how the wood holds winter on one side and room warmth on the other. Wood is a slow scholar. It learns and releases heat at a patient pace. Thermal. Smoothing reaches your skin before your mind names it. Tiny receptors cool, warm, and in between report to your spine and invite deeper calm. The story your body hears is simple. Continuity lives here. You slip off your shoes. Your feet meet the floorboards with a grateful thud. Pressure along your soles sends news upward, and the vagus nerve gathers it like a shepherd. Gentle pressure-deep touch bends the nervous system toward rest. It is the principle that makes a heavy blanket a friend to sleep. Weight signals the world is predictable. You are held without being pinned. A low chair waits near the hearth. When you sit, its cushion sighs, then goes quiet. The fabric is a little rough, and your fingers trace the weave. Texture draws attention into the present. Attention, once gathered, does not need to be guarded. It can simply rest where it is placed. Your breathing matches the room's rhythm. In through the nose, out through the lips. Each inhale delivers cedar and smoke. Each exhale releases a measure of tension you didn't know remained. Olfaction bypasses the usual relay and speaks natively to memory and feeling. Kindly smells quiet the amygdala, but explanation is optional. The result arrives anyway. Your jaw loosens. Your neck lengthens. Your belly softens like bread left to rise. The fire rests low and even, ember thick and generous. You add a single. Split log and listen as it catches. Flame flicker moves at rhythms your brain finds soothing, near the slow frequencies of relaxation. As brightness shivers across the wall, your pupils narrow, but melatonin's nightly slope keeps descending. Warm light encourages chemistry to keep its promise. On the mantel stands a bowl of pine cones, each a spiral of wooden hands. You lift one and feel its geometry under your thumb. Fractals like these repeat patterns at different scales botanical. Neural, cloud, and your visual system spends less effort on them. Ease accumulates. Your mind, allowed to idle, begins small housekeeping, stacking thoughts, sweeping dust, dimming unnecessary lamps. Across from you, the kettle wears a faint halo where steam begins but does not yet rise. You let it be. Delay is its own medicine. The room invites patience, and patience answers. Each second widens, and within the wideness, details appear. A crack shaped like a river delta near the doorframe. Soot feathered above the hearthstone. The threadbare ellipse where many feet have pivoted. You stand and wander, not to search, but to let your body map the space. The walls give back a modest echo, soft because wood eats harshness and returns only what can be borne. You touch the window frame, the table lip, the door again, and each contact writes another simple sentence in the language of place. Here, here, here. Interoception. The sense of the inside syncs with exteroception, the sense of the outside, until the two agree. The kettle begins a soft conversation, a pre-whistle murmur, like wind bottling itself. You consider tea and decide to wait until the water asks without doubt. Choice without pressure is a luxury the body registers as safety. Autonomy settles across your shoulders. You do not have to earn this room. You only have to stay long enough. To let it remember you, you return to the chair and draw the wool blanket over your knees. The fabric holds faint sun from some earlier afternoon, and your skin recites the memory with pleasure. Heat spreads with closeness. The blanket's weight does its old alchemy, persuading the edges of you to be less sharp. Thoughts that had been standing now sit. Thoughts that had been pacing lie down dot. It occurs to you that homes are partly chemical. We build them from wood and stone, yes, but also from molecules that tutor the nervous system. Cedar to soothe, smoke to mark enclosure, wool to reassure by weight, warm air to relax smooth muscle so breath can widen. Every inhale writes a gentle note. Every exhale erases a hurry. The kettle finally sings, not a shriek, but a clear ribbon of sound, and you rise. You pour water over something floral, and the air lifts new sweetness. Steam carries it in visible loops, a scroll the air writes and rewrites in the glow. You wrap your hands around the cup, and warmth enters through your palms, persuading deeper vessels to open. Your heart answers with gratitude. You take a slow sip. Heat moves down and blooms across your chest. The room seems to lean closer, as if to listen to your quiet. Outside, wind leans through the pines, and the door gives a contented tick. You set the cup down and follow the sound with your eyes toward the entry. The wood remembers you now. The latch too. Objects become familiar by contact, and you become familiar to yourself. You let your gaze travel beyond the hearth, past the table to the shadowed pane of glass where night waits like a velvet field. A pale seam of sky shows between the curtains. The cabin stays warm and steady, but something gentle calls from that darker square. You listen without moving, and the call is not urgent. It is a suggestion made of light. You breathe once more the cedar and smoke, and the room breathes you back. Safe inside, you notice yourself grow curious about what the night beyond the window is preparing. What quiet brightness might be waiting above the trees? Patient as an old friend, you feel the quiet stars waiting. You lift a corner of the curtain, and the night answers in silver. Somewhere beyond the glass, a patient map of light is unfolding. You wonder how far starlight travels to find you here, and your hand pauses on the window latch. You kneel a little closer to the hearth and feel the day loosen its last knot. The logs settle with a sigh that sounds like an old friend making room for you on a couch. Small sparks step upward and vanish, brief travelers that remind you of distant cities seen from a night plane. The language of the fireplace is not made of letters. It is cadence, warmth, and glow. You read it with your skin, your ears, your breathing. Flame leans and returns, improvising around the steady baseline of embers. Sometimes a blue edge appears at the base, a cool note inside heat, where gases first ignite. Infrared light, invisible to your eyes, moves outward in waves that your skin learns like a favorite song. Thermoreceptors along your hands listen for that wavelength and report a simple truth to your nervous system. You are warm enough. The body remembers this kind of message. For most of human time, night meant cold, and cold meant vigilance. Fire changed the math. Around it, the watch could relax, food could soften, stories could find a circle. You feel that ancestry without needing to think it. Your shoulders drop. Your breath lengthens at the bottom. The present grows generous. You notice how the flames partition their labor. At the tips, orange tongues wave and fade. Underneath, coals keep a stern mathematical heat. Radiant warmth travels straight, warming. Your shins first, then spilling wider into the room. Convection rises up the chimney, drawing fresh air toward the fire and past your face. A soft current that keeps you awake enough to enjoy getting sleepy. Your heartbeat follows the tempo. Slow, then slower, it learns the pattern of the fires. Unfussy irregularity. Variability, those small changes between beats, is a sign of resilience. The body enjoys a little unpredictability when the context is safe. Like the fire, your rhythm is not a metronome. It is a living wave that knows how to wander and return. The logs speak in short vowels, snaps, and hushes. Each sound keeps company with the pink noise of the room, the low rumble of the chimney, the faint wind combing the pines, the whisper of fabric shifting as you settle. Pink noise concentrates energy in lower frequencies that brains interpret as gentle and continuous. It masks the sharp peaks that startle, and in their absence, your deeper systems come forward like shy animals at dusk. Ash gathers as a gray continent, shifting under the smallest draft. You poke it with a slender iron and find glowing underlands, sudden sunrise beneath snow. Oxygen reaches them and they bloom, then settle back into their private red. It reminds you that warmth often hides. You do not need to stoke every ember. To trust that heat remains. Your chair receives you, and you lean into its old geometry. The spine of the backrest fits yours as though carved from a memory of your posture. Wood yields just enough. The chair and the fire conduct a modest collaboration. One holds, one warms. Muscles that spend days arguing for control accept a truce. You take in the room again through the lens of glow. Edges soften. Shadows breathe. The ceiling reflects a river of light that never repeats itself. The occipital lobe idles, glad to gaze at a pattern that is interesting without being demanding. The eyes make tiny slow movements called microsaccades, keeping vision alive while the mind drifts. Here, drifting is the assignment. You listen for the fireplace words you cannot hear with the ears. Infrared stitches your skin to the room. Convection brushes your cheeks. Light writes soft letters on your retinas that your brain reads as gentleness. Even the faint scent of char has work to do. Smoke contains tiny phenols and aldehydes that your nose interprets as enclosed, domestic, cooked. When your midbrain receives that message, it eases its guard. Another log tumbles inward with the grace of a dancer ending a turn. Sparks scatter like punctuation brief, bright commas the air writes before erasing. The cabin walls receive the light and give it back warmer. Wood is generous like that. It absorbs the sudden and returns the steady. You draw your feet up under the blanket and feel heat collect. A small climate you govern with tiny adjustments. You learn the system quickly. When to lift the edge for cool, when to tuck for more. The lesson is uncomplicated and oddly profound. Comfort is active listening performed on yourself. Behind the audible crackle, a deeper quiet grows. Your inner ear, where balance lives, likes the steadiness of sitting after a day of motion. The otolith's tiny stones rest in their gel, telling your brain that the world is not tilting. Safety again, confirmed from a different doorway. Redundancy is not waste in biology. It is assurance. You lean closer and watch flame unravel into its colors. Blue near the base, where combustion runs most efficient. Yellow, where tiny soot particles incandesce. Dark, where not enough oxygen reaches to make. Light. You think of how emotions have layers, too. Efficient truths at the base, shallower feelings above, and the dim corners that need more air. You do not force a lesson. You simply let the parallel be present and kind. Time dilates. It is not later or earlier, it is longer. The clock on the wall ticks, but the sound slides under the fire's rhythm and melts. Cortisol, the busy messenger of daytime, has fewer errands now. Melatonin, patient and unhurried, continues its slow climb. The fire is not bright enough to interrupt it, and your body thanks the choice of embers over blaze. You add one last piece of wood, careful and slow, and watch how the flame receives it. Welcoming what is offered without devouring it is another kind of wisdom. You practice it by giving the fire only what it can use. It rewards you with the softest roar, a traveling. Hush like the sea in miniature, the heat deepens and rounds your edges. Jaw, throat, chest, belly, each one loosens by a degree you can name. Your breath moves like bellows used by a considerate smith, steady and measured. If you listen carefully, you hear the old word inside exhale. Release. Outside, the pines tilt. Their long song toward the roof. Wind and fire collaborate in a quiet fugue. Inside, you are not audience but instrument. Warmth vibrates your tissues at scales too small to detect, easing microtensions from places you only notice when they stop aching. Rest is arriving from the edges inward. Eventually, the flames step down to a city of coals, red roofs bright under a dark sky of ash. Their light is enough to navigate by and not enough to keep you from drifting. The room's temperature finds a plateau. Thermoregulation, always busy under the headline news of thought, declares victory and goes on humming. You sit back and feel the floor under the chair under you, the blanket over you, the air around you, the fire in front of you. 4 directions of support. The sense of falling inward ends, replaced by the sense of being held. You have not earned this peace. You have entered it. Somewhere nearby, wood creaks in its sleep 2 boards, asking and answering a question only. Old houses understand. A sound makes you smile. The fireplace replies with a last articulate crackle, the kind a storyteller uses before a final paragraph. You hear the shape of what comes next, even if you cannot yet say its name. When you look away from the hearth, the room holds a second invitation. A curved silhouette by the firelight, gentle and patient. You recognize the posture even before the object takes its name. Something in you, that child who loved to be carried by motion, lifts its head and listens, already swaying. In the quiet afterglow, the curved wooden frame seems to beckon. You can almost feel the slow arc beneath you, a promise of movement without leaving the warmth. You rise toward the rocking chair, ready to be cradled by its patient rhythm. You set a small candle on the table and touch the match to its wick. For a heartbeat nothing happens, then a seed of light opens, buttery and calm, and the room tilts toward gold. Shadows ripple outward, like rings in a pond. They lengthen over. The floorboards climb the cabinet and bloom across the ceiling. A slow map that redraws itself with every breath. You let the day's clock fall away. The wristwatch lies face down, the phone gone quiet, and what remains is the dialogue between light and dark. Candlelight is amber, rich in long wavelengths the eye reads softly. In this color, melatonin keeps rising. Night chemistry continues. Without interruption. You feel it as a yawn from inside out, a tide lifting the edges of you toward rest. A fern frond moves almost invisibly. The flame makes minute weather, drawing warm air upward and pulling cooler air in a loop. With each current, the shadows shift a degree, then shift back. It is a pendulum without a tick, a clock that counts pause and release. Your breathing takes the hint. In, the flame narrows. Out, it widens. The body mirrors what it sees when safety is sure. Behind your eyes, a master clock listens for light. You sense its gratitude to the room. Dimness, steadiness, the lack of blue sharpness that would demand alertness. Signals travel to the pineal gland like quiet instructions, and sleep chemistry hums through the bloodstream, reminding muscles they can lengthen and thoughts they can loosen their grip. Shadows teach. When the flame leans, a chair back turns. Sundial, its long silhouette sweeping the floor by a thumb's width. On the wall, a bowl's curve expands, then contracts, a galaxy practicing breath. You watch and feel time reorganize around sensation. Minutes stop being stacked numbers and become textures. Warm on your hands, soft at your eyelids, wide where your chest opens with each unhurried inhale. The cabin joins the lesson. Wood drinks brightness and returns it mellowed. Your mind, which traced sharp outlines all day, allows itself to soften. In soft focus, you notice more, not less. The shimmer along the wax, the halo where heat bends the air, the hush that forms when attention is whole. You tilt the candle to pool the wax. A small meniscus forms and the wick brightens. Firelight carries frequencies the visual cortex need not wrestle with. It is interesting enough to keep you here and gentle enough to let you drift. Between engagement and drifting loves, the passageway to sleep, and you stand in that doorway, unpushed dot outside. Night presses its quiet face to the windows. The glass receives it and clouds with your breath. Cycles everywhere, cool to warm, bright to dim, inhale to exhale. Your heart follows, a drummer playing simpler patterns, leaving space between beats. Variability widens like a hammock. You feel the swing as ease. The candle writes slow mathematics on the room. At the table's edge, a forked shadow points toward the door, then drifts toward the kettle, measuring space in degrees of almost. You remember sundials and realize the sun is now the size of your thumbnail, patient and domesticated. Thoughts arrive like moths and do not stay. The talkative network of day quiets when attention has a favorite object. In the quiet, memory peels back its loud pages and leaves thin, comforting ones on top. A porch at dusk, rain on canvas. The first time you learned your own slow breathing. Emotion lands, then settles, like ash that glows before turning gray. You notice your posture in the chair, the slight forward lean that says listening. The spine lifts into an easy curve. Gravity is kind tonight. It presses you just enough into the cushion to say stay. The room replies by holding you, and the candle's clock ticks in waves of brightness. Nobody hears. You stand to move the candle and watch shadows recompose the instant you change position. Your hand grows enormous on the wall. Your profile doubles and overlaps. You smile at the trick and feel a small delight that wakes without waking. Novelty, carefully measured, keeps the mind present as it grows drowsy. The lesson is gentle. Change can be slow and still complete. Back at the table, you seat the candle in a ring of melted wax. The flame steadies. The room breathes again as one organism. You count 3 long breaths and feel the throat widen on each exhale. The nervous system hears the lengthening and follows. Parasympathetic pathways brighten like footpaths dusted with moon. Rest becomes a place instead of a plan. If there were a clock on the wall, it would be wrong here. Seconds would feel like visitors from a country you are leaving. In this country, moments are knit by continuity, not number. You understand why sleepers sometimes wake before alarms. The body owns a metronome that listens to light, temperature, and habit. Tonight, the cues say dusk, indoors, safe, warm. The clock inside you nods and resets itself by candlelight. Wax thickens. The wick shortens. The flame drops its shoulders and leans toward a private midnight. You agree to go with it. The last. Tall shadow thins to a ribbon, and a new geometry waits in the dark beyond. Your eyes enjoy the fade, the way edges let go of their names and merge. When the flame finally bows, a cold glow remains. An afterimage your retina carries, like a closing lullaby dot. You sit with the not quite dark. The room is legible by memory and by touch, and that is enough. Your breath is the only pendulum now. Somewhere in the quiet, wood murmurs its nightly settling. You answer by gathering the blanket and listening for the next invitation. The room will give dot. It comes as a shape beside the hearth, curved and sure, waiting in the half-light. A gentle geometry that promises motion without going anywhere. Circles. Within circles, a rhythm the body remembers from before it had words. The shadow of a curved backrest rocks across the floor, slower than any clock. You feel your breath sway to meet it, ready to be carried without moving. You turn toward the chair, as if time itself were offering you a cradle. You unfold the wool blanket and feel the air change. Its heft is gentle but sure, like a quiet hand settling across your shoulders with permission to rest. The fibers carry a faint scent of sun and soap. When you lower it over your legs, your breath deepens as if your lungs had been waiting for this small, certain signal. Weight is a kind teacher. Along your skin live receptors for pressure and stretch. When steady stimulation spreads across a wide area, they send messages that favor calm, and your nervous system translates them into softness. The body believes what it feels. Deep touch tells the ancient watchman to loosen his grip on the night. You draw the blanket higher. Warmth gathers in slow circles, cooling at your core and moving outward to hands and feet. Blood vessels widen, politely underheat, opening tiny roads so the evening can travel through you with less resistance. The texture is its own conversation. Wool catches your fingertips and releases them, returning you to the present whenever thought strays. The weave holds little pockets of air, billions of miniature quilts, slowing the escape of warmth. You shift your weight, and the blanket settles into new topography. It molds without argument, then holds. This agreement between body and cloth creates a border you do not need to defend. Inside, attention grows simple. Outside, the world can carry itself. You think of how infants calm when held to a steady chest. The rhythm of breathing, the firm cradle of arms, the reliable field of warmth, early lessons in safety. The body remembers. A weighted blanket reprises the hug without asking for anything back. Your muscles, interpreters fluent in pressure. File the message under peace. Your shoulders surrender first, then the long muscles along your spine. Each exhale carries a strand of tension out through your ribs. On the inhale, the blanket resists just enough to make breath deliberate, a slow bellows you operate with care. The mind follows the motion like a leaf on a stream. Around you, the cabin quiets. The fire offers a low glow. The chair's cushion remembers your shape. Presence, at this hour, is simply the willingness to feel. The blanket helps by giving your skin something kindly to notice. Sensation anchors attention, and attention becomes the raft on which thought can rest. Imagine the blanket at the level of threads, hundreds twisted into yarn, thousands crossing to make the fabric, each crossover a handshake. The design is to distribute. No single point bears the story alone. This is the gift of 1,000 threads, the load shared until it is no longer a load. Your jaw releases, and the small muscles near your ears soften. The tongue lowers from the roof of the mouth. The throat widens. Sleep often begins with these humble permissions. You do not command it. You invite it by preparing a place. A blanket is part builder, part door held open. The mind tries once to rehearse a list, but the weight makes rehearsal feel unnecessary, like practicing a song you already know. The list fades. In its place, images arrive that are not quite dreams. A meadow under overcast light, a river with slow braids, a cat settling in a patch of sun. They are to be witnessed as they pass. You slide your feet against the fabric and feel gentle resistance. Proprioceptors along your joints report that limbs are accounted for, aligned, at peace. Without the small alarms of lost blankets and cold toes, your body does not send wakeful signals. It reports instead on comfort. Breathing now sets the tempo. 4 counts in, 6 counts out, nothing strict, only generous. The exhale lengthens vagal tone, the body's long line of rest and digest. Heartbeat variability increases, a resilient flutter that feels like ocean rather than drum. You turn an inch to the left, and the blanket shifts its allegiance without complaint. It is loyal to where you are, not where you were. The warmth follows. The weight follows. The moving envelope of safety redraws itself to include you. Sometimes it is physics arranged for kindness. The wool warms further, and a faint whisper of lanolin rises, clean and old. Scent ties to memory with a shorter route than thought. It reaches back and brings forward evenings you cannot name, rooms, described only by light and the sense of a trusted quiet nearby. You do not need the details. You need the feeling, and the feeling is here. You lift the edge to let in a sip of cooler air. Contrast wakes the skin just enough to enjoy being warm again when you lower the edge and tuck it under your heel. Small. Experiment school. Warm. Wait here. Wait there, reassure the body that it has agency even while it rests. Time loosens its laces. The room's sounds locate themselves on a map of nearly sleep. The kettles click as it cools, the ash settling with sighs, wind shaping a long vowel in the pines. Nothing requires reply. Everything means stay. You sense the boundary between waking and dreaming thin to a gold thread. On one side, words line up like polite guests. On the other, images tumble into a language older than grammar. The blanket waits that threshold, making it less a border and more a bridge. You cross when you need to and return without jolt when. A log shifts and speaks. Some blankets are measured by grams per square meter, by fill, by tog. Yours is measured in stories per inch, the ones it silences and the ones it invites. Tonight it tells a story about gravity used kindly, about pressure as lullaby, about warmth as a letter addressed to you with no need for reply. Your hands lie open. Your face smooths to an expression a painter might call repose. Sleep approaches, like a shoreline long watched from a boat, now close enough to hear pebbles roll. The blanket does not push you there. It floats beside you and calms the water. Beneath the woven weight, the smallest waves of breath rise and fall under your ribs. Each wave lays a thin film of quiet across thought. Each return pulls another scrap of daylight into the soft archive. Where it can wait until morning, don't let the next inhale arrive as if from far away. Let the next exhale lengthen as if it had all night. The blanket holds the place for you to do both. A door somewhere inside opens to a wider room that contains meadow, river, cat, stars. Under the even warmth, a curiosity stirs about what the night sounds like beyond the glass. Not a desire to rise, only sweetness of the thought that the world continues outside this harbor. Crickets may practice their chorus. Rain may be writing on the roof in a hand you love. The blanket approves of the wondering and keeps you where you are. Your eyelids lower as if tugged by silk. The room dims, then dims again. In the last moment of waking, a thought arrives. Somewhere nearby, a page waits with a story that moves. At the speed of sleep, your hand rests heavier, and the weight answers like a nod. Held by 1,000 threads, you listen to a quiet beginning, a small sound from the dark corner of the room. It could be the first soft patter on the roof, or the kettle's distant breath gathering into a song. You stay still, ready to follow whichever gentle voice speaks next.